Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada.
Thank you,
Ms. Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your agenda is in order and ready for your approval.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on your agenda is to receive the general manager's report, and we do have a few items to present to you today. My screen's not working, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll be looking over this way. I don't mean to be distractive. But our first, it's okay. Our first item is a review of our trip to Denver. We just, Monday and Tuesday of this week, a group of almost 50 Southern Nevadans traveled to Denver to learn more about their investment in infrastructure, their investment in light rail, economic development, kind of how we wanted to hear from them how they became Denver. As you know, Denver at this point is a city where a lot of businesses want to locate, a lot of millennials want to move to. And we learned, it was really interesting. What we learned, above all, I could end my speech right now by just saying one word, but I'm going to go on and on. The one word we heard consistently, no matter which panel we were talking with, no matter which tour we were on, was collaboration. This word came across every single panel that we had, and I'm looking at with some board members that we had with us. We had Chairman Brown, we had Vice Chair Deborah March, and we had Mayor Lee. And am I right? Did we not hear that consistently? Even these panel members did not coordinate all together to come up and coordinate that message, but we heard it consistently. We were very lucky to have the firm of Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck coordinate these panels and these tours. Brownstein has a strong presence in Denver and has helped them through a lot of their lobbying efforts, their financing efforts, their planning efforts, so they had a lot of insight and were able to pull together some really amazing speakers. We had top-notch speakers. It would be like if a group from Denver came here and we had you and some of your top-notch people and some of our top-notch economic development people come and speak. So 2 days of panels. We had a very diverse group of people. We had public sector, we had private sector. You can see in the photo there. Large group of us. These people spent their money and spent their time to come on this trip with us. We toured the new hotel at Denver that is connected to the Denver airport and is soon to be having a new commuter rail that connects it from the airport into downtown. We toured Denver Union Station, which is an amazing success story. This is an area that was blight. This is an area that you didn't want to go to after sunset. You didn't want to go to during the day. And now you look around and there is literally billions of dollars of development investment being made in that area. Class A office space. This is the place people want to be. They have created what they call the living room of Denver, and they did that through very strategic infrastructure investments in that area. I joke that all the cranes that used to be in Las Vegas, they've all moved to Denver, and ideally we'd like to get those cranes back as soon as they're done with them. Collaboration was definitely the message. What we heard was it was because of collaboration that in the mid-2000 or 2008, the FTA chose Denver and only Denver to award over $1 billion in federal transit money to. Originally, this pot of money was designed to go to several cities. Several cities were competing for this money, and they truly thought, FTA thought that money would be allocated to multiple cities. But in the end, it was only Denver that was able to show that their cities, and they have 32 cities, that their county, that their public sector, that their private sector, that everybody was on the same page and working together to try and pursue this vision of light rail and connectivity throughout. So they gave them the full $1 billion. And the FTA made it very clear, we are giving this to you because you are the only community that can demonstrate full collaboration amongst all your different jurisdictions, your public sector, and your private sector. They attribute collaboration to the fact that they've been able to pass a series of ballot questions, of referendums, asking the public, do you want to invest in your infrastructure? They credit their collaboration for being the reason that they just recently, not recently, but a while ago, secured a very huge smart cities investment by Panasonic. Panasonic, you can see in this picture right here, is building an absolutely huge investment in Denver, and they did it too because it was located along the light rail corridor. So you see, you get federal enthusiasm, you get local enthusiasm, and you get development enthusiasm when you've got collaboration amongst all of your jurisdictions, your private sector, public sector. So that was our tour. Collaboration. Did I get that word across? We'd also like to recognize a fixed route driver. We have got Mr. Rudy Patino. He's been a coach operator with, oh, yes. Sorry.
Mayor Goodman.
Yeah. Okay.
That trip sounds wonderful. I'm sorry.
I know. You wanted to go. I appreciate, yeah.
Years
Yeah.
ago, and it was wonderful. I'm so delighted to hear the advancement. Two questions.
Sure.
Who took the leadership? Well, actually, three.
Okay.
Who took the leadership in making the plan that was the ultimate appeal? Who was
Okay.
What group or
Sure.
individual group took the leadership on that? How far in advance was that prepared?
Sure.
Yeah, I think those two will do it. The length of
Okay.
time it took to get it together.
Right.
And who took the leadership to pull it together and make sure all the little letters were dotted and crossed?
Sure. So they tell the story, and I like this, that they suffered a pretty significant economic crisis in the mid-'80s with the energy crisis, and their primary economic development guy, Tom Clark, told us, an economic downturn is a terrible thing to waste. You don't want to waste that crisis. That crisis forced a lot of the collaboration. They recognized that if we were going to continue to grow and continue to be healthier, we were going to regain Denver back, that we needed to come up with a vision for what we wanted to be. So they had a strong economic development group, but they also had a strong mayor. This is back when Mayor Pena, now who became Secretary of Transportation Pena, was mayor, and he kind of set the original course. He apparently worked very hard to garner collaboration amongst the 32 different cities, spent a lot of time individually with each of them, building consensus for the fact that we needed to work together. So you had two things. You had private sector getting together saying, we're going to have to do something, but you also had a very strong mayor. And in Denver, the mayor is it's a strong mayor seat. So he set the tone, but apparently he set the tone not for I am the mayor, but for we are going to figure this out and move it forward. So he was the one who secured that airport, originally the funding for that airport, which was a pretty strong tipping point, a catalyst for, I think, Denver recognizing that they could do something. So.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just one more question to that. So when was the plan finalized that would be able to be submitted? How long did it take?
Sure, 30 years, really. I mean, if you figure it was in the 80s that they first started having these conversations. It's been quite a while. And that's the other thing. They decided collectively they weren't going to be planning for the next 10 years or 20 years. And this is hard to do, but it's hard to do. But to say, I'm going to start planning for 50 years, 100 years, that's a really different plan and puts things into different perspective than focusing constantly on just the 10 and 20-year plans.
Thank you. So you got out of that, therefore, that you would suggest looking at a long-term plan.
I think internally that's one of the things that we will start to talk more about. Now we need to do the shorter-term plans as well, but certainly trying to garner more public conversation, convening with our private and public sector partners in figuring out what do we want to be in 50 and 100 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Lee.
Thank you very much. I also, I was going to back out when I heard there were so many people. I thought, well, you got a lot of smart people there, and I'm so glad I went. But my question is leadership. And what they recognize in Denver, they got their business community together. Mm-hmm. And we don't have any Dow companies here. Mm-hmm. The top 30 industrial companies in America aren't here. We don't have very many Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies here. So we've got to figure out, most of ours are service industry type businesses. We've got to figure out who our business leaders are. But the other thing is that I recognize is this board right here, we got 3 mayors plus myself and 2 county commissioners. this is probably the board that, with Southern Nevada Strong, what you've brought forth, we want to do collaboration, but you're not going to get all of us in North Las Vegas to come to a meeting and all of Henderson to come to a meeting and all the county commissioners to come to a meeting and, okay, how are we going to make this work? Is this the board that should be given the opportunity to direct the future of our valley? Or what, and then when
Sure.
we talk collaboration, this is a collaborative group here. We get along well. How do we collaborate more? Or what are we not doing as a board here to start being that visionary group?
Well, I don't know that we've ever really tasked ourselves as the RTC or the RTC board with considering that role, but certainly as I left Denver, it did give you pause to want to take a look at what boards do we have, what leadership organizations do we have that are regional and that do hold positions that can influence the culture of collaboration within each one of their entities. And I would think that you are the board that can do that.
So if we decide among ourselves that we would like to start this discussion, what would be the next step? Chairman Brown has been here for, probably the longest serving chairman, I don't know. And Deborah here, Nevada Strong, and Chris and you guys, this is basically the most educated group of people concerning transportation, the future of where we're going. What would be the next step just to start moving in that direction then for us? And I know you're not supposed to be the leader, we are, but
Right.
we need to work around a visionary leader too. So I'd ask you to say, I think this is the board, that we start talking about the things. Are we going to do light rail down to Fremont Street? Are we going to do something out to the airport, and stuff like that, and start making those decisions in this board right here? I couldn't figure out another place that this information, where everything shouldn't funnel into you and then
Right.
funnels to this board. So I'm just throwing that out for some discussion. I think we have the leaders on this board that are collaborative and do work very well together.
I would agree that this board has really good chemistry amongst it and does talk and collaborate. Well, as we move forward on things like continuing to report to you on Southern Nevada Strong, continuing to report to you on the Transportation Investment Business Plan, on what we call the Regional Project Coordination effort, which is the Orange Cone Coordination effort, that we have some, we bring to you probably some very specific asks for direction in directing us to continue to take that leadership role.
So, Mr. Chairman, just curious, would we form a subcommittee to work with Tina to get an idea? Okay, what do you guys think? What do we think? How do we get going on this? There's got to be some sort of action. We just can't
Sure.
leave that trip and just say,
Yeah, you're right.
hope
It
the
was
next guy does it here.
That trip, you don't want to waste that trip. You don't want to waste
Yeah.
a great economic crisis. You don't want to waste a trip where you just had 46 of some very prominent community leaders go and experience this.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity happening throughout this valley. We are getting some better companies. As they come in, we say, listen, this is where we're going with transportation. Mayors and county commissions need to know where we're going as an organization, so I don't know. I think there's something here, Commissioner, that we can do as a small group, as a subcommittee or committee of the whole, and start moving forth this. But I would devote some of my time to work alongside your leadership, however you chose, Larry, if you wanted to do this.
Okay, but
Mr. Chairman, if
why don't
I-
we, and I'll come to addition, why don't we
Sure.
put that as an agenda item? I
Okay.
think we're getting outside the realm as far as forming committees and such. So if we could place that at the mayor's request, an item that would identify our,
Further the-
identify our role and possibly creation of a subcommittee.
Okay.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think you were a member of the city council at the time, but in the year 2000, when we were moving along all right, but the downtown core of our city was pathetic. And just gotten possession, or were in the process of getting the brownfield down there, the Union Pacific land. And we took a trip to Lodo, and they were exactly where, now that's 16 years ago. Their plans were there. They had already initiated the light rail concept, and look where they are today. Because 16 years ago, the downtown area was empty, boarded up, just like ours. And so while you look at the long range, I think, I'm tend to really support what Mayor Lee is saying here. We can have lots of conversations going forward, but until you take a hold of it. And I just recommend to our chairman here that to consider it, not necessarily make committees, but we don't want to be another 16 years out looking at where we are, saying why now it's 32 years and nothing's happened. So I think we really need to take hold of it, seeing what they've accomplished.
Commissioner?
Thank you. Again, I apologize for not being able to make it, but I was there in '08, and it was fun, and I know they've added more to that point. I do think we have to look at the issue, and an agenda item makes good sense, because we have the conversation at MPO. We've got the committee that Deborah's chair of, that I'm that's looking at the Southern Nevada Strong. There's even the SNRPC. We would like to be something more useful, which is the Southern Nevada Regional Planning Coalition, and so there may be some additional opportunities there. We may not have the number of businesses, I think, Mayor Lee, you're absolutely correct, but we have some of the wealthiest individuals in the world that live in Nevada. And maybe it's time to figure out who those folks are, whether they're artists, whether they're retired businessmen and women, and have a conversation with them about this valley. Because they chose to make it at least part-time home, if nothing else, and what was the draw and how can they help contribute in some way. I would also say that I like the gentleman's phrasing, don't waste a downturn. My bigger fear as a politician is that we'll not only waste our downturn, but we'll go back to the same bad habits. And if we do that, we will mess it up for everybody. So with no disrespect and not a criticism, we need to look at annexation and get a handle on that. We should be promoting as electeds when we do our zoning true infill TOD development instead of the plop, plop, fizz, fizz approach, because that then helps with the corridor. And I'm glad that the urban rail that I believe will come down Maryland Parkway, that will interconnect from the airport to the convention center to downtown to the medical district in the city of Las Vegas and then on to North Las Vegas. And we haven't forgotten our outlines, but you got to start within where your corridors come into play. That can be a game changer, because the public then will see that we're not wasting money. With no disrespect to monorail, we're not doing an antiquated kind of project, although they can feed one end, which is the Mandalay Bay piece, which still makes good sense, but then focus on how we move our public but our tourists. So I think there's a really good opportunity to kind of bring 3 or 4 different types of groups together to maybe give different charges to, but we have to be responsible as electeds. And sometimes we aren't. We still think that growth is good for growth's sake, and that isn't true. And we don't even have a living wage adopted down in Southern Nevada, as far as I'm concerned. We really should be promoting that so people actually can afford to live here and afford their homes. So there's all those factors that come in. But the meeting that Congresswoman Titus put together with Mr. Fox from the Transit, I think we're poised. And so that's the good thing. Go back to the mayor's question. We've got a plan, and I think if there's grant dollars that come, we're kind of poised in Southern Nevada to do something that will become the trigger, and then we have to really take a step back and take a look at what we need. The TBIP is one piece, the Governor's Committee on Tourism and dollars, but that's a lot of politics that's being played right now. It's not necessarily going to translate. So then I might add that you might want to do a presentation to the Southern Nevada Forum, which is the electeds, Democrats and Republicans from the legislature. We're all parts on different various committees. So at least either the governance committee, and you can check with Commissioner Kirkpatrick, because she's still helping Irene Bustamante Adams and Aaron Ford coordinate that. But that might be because we're going to need them as partners at some point too. So that might be just it's what we used to call our Southern Nevada caucus structure. And so those would just be some other food for thought as when we do the agenda items, so that we're kind of covering some of those other bases that are there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, thank you. Basically what we're doing here is building a brighter future for Southern Nevada, and it takes a step at a time, but I think the suggestions that you made are so important to start the foundation and build on it, so that we can be sure that we're going to be able to accommodate the increased traffic, not only by more citizens needing to use our roadways and needing solutions, but also our tourists. And as we grow from 41 million to 45 million, how are we moving them? How are they going to move through the valley? So we have to look at these solutions, and I think that the suggestions made to put this on the agenda for a robust conversation on how we solve this and how we move forward, I think is important.
Thank you. And just follow up a little bit. A recession is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes.
Was the
quote. You're right.
And-
Recession.
I think all these comments are on point as far as timing-wise. We've never been in a better position valley-wide to make some long-term sustainable decisions. We have, and this is just listening to everyone talk, we have certainly the SNR PC. At the RTC, we have Southern Nevada Strong, Transportation Resource Advisory Committee, TIBP, FRI. We have the Southern Nevada Forum. We have Rossi and the Convention Authority looking for a $2.5 billion expansion, a potential dome stadium. All this is happening right now with a host of committees, and probably the sharpest minds in town are scattered all about. We're really taking advantage. So, Mayor Lee, your point is well taken that very shortly this community will be making or choosing not to make decisions that will pretty much dictate what will be in another 10, 20 years. I would encourage, in preparation for our agenda item next month, going back to our respective boards and getting a sense from our colleagues what they feel is important and where we should be moving as far as an RTC board and a community. There's so much happening, and as Commissioner G said, we don't want to be here a year from now saying, boy, we missed a great opportunity. And it's going to take some real tough decisions and a lot of consensus. The one thing about Denver, which I spoke to Mayor Goodman about, it is the city-county government of Denver, one agency. And the mayor it's a mayoral form of government. That's a host of, a horse of a different color. And their RTD, the RTC comparable agency, is made up of 15 members elected by the general public. Whole different dynamic, and the last and perhaps the most important point that I've gotten out of many trips is this takes time. We have to take the first major step to commit, but then our expectation has to be a 20-year window to build out a true system. And that's where we lose people when we say we're making decisions today, perhaps on light rail on Maryland Parkway to downtown. We're going to see it complete in 10 to 12 years. I mean, that's where we lose a lot of people. And getting our public and community support for decisions today that many of us may not even be around to see, that's the challenge.
That is.
And so accepting that there's going to be a pretty good time span involved, that's what I'd love to get back to this board and talk about next month. Great. Thank you. Excellent conversation. And Tina, before you go on, I just wanted to recognize, speaking of new companies, Mayor Lee, we have a new one coming to town called MTM. MJ is well aware they are now the state vendor to help identify Medicaid eligible citizens. They will be partnering with the RTC and helping us identify those Medicaid eligible transit riders. So Nick Lowe Piccolo and Matt Bulwark, if you'd stand and just wave there, guys. I know you have to go to a conference call, but bringing 40-plus jobs into Southern Nevada and with a great opportunity to grow into the Southwest. The Show Me State, a family-owned business from Missouri. All right. Welcome. And looking
Mr.
forward to
Chairman.
working with the RTC team. Thank you both for stopping by.
And Mr. Chairman, while you're mentioning Medicaid, I am sorry, but I think there needs to be a real point out. Medicare is set federally. Medicaid is set by state. Medicaid rates, we need to be collaborative in appealing to our legislature to get us up in the ball game with our surrounding states as far as Medicaid reimbursement rates, which will also fall over to our private partners in insurance reimbursement rates. So I encourage you as you go through your daily, we welcome you, and I think this is great. But there's a bigger picture here, and we need to have all of us together working on this to raise the Medicaid reimbursement rates throughout the state legislatively. So just wanted to get it because you brought it up, Mr. Chairman, and welcoming these
Quick,
fine
guys,
gentlemen.
quick, leave.
Sorry
leave.
you did
Get
it.
The side door, go. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we would like to recognize Keolis driver Rudy Patino. Is Rudy in the crowd with us? Rudy, come on down. Rudy has been a coach operator for 14 years and is currently the #1 seniority driver for Keolis. On February 5th, Mr. Patino logged more than 3 million miles of accident-free driving. To put that into perspective, that is the equivalent of driving around the circumference of the Earth more than 120 times. He has numerous commendations for customer service and is a peer mentor for all Keolis operators.
In a lifetime. Amazing.
That's some serious driving.
I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
I'd just like to say thank you again to everybody, and a nice little plaque, but I work for Keolis, and they're a great company. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more. We would also like to recognize John Harvey of MV, if he's with us today. Can we have him? Mr. Harvey is an exemplary employee with a strong work ethic. His supervisors say that he is a man of few words, but his actions and professionalism speak volumes. On numerous occasions, Mr. Harvey has stepped up to the plate when operational needs increased. As a result, MV knows that it can call on him when help is needed, and that he is always pleasant and provides exceptional customer service to his passengers. Congratulations, Mr. Harvey. He's a man of few words.
Well, I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. MV, y'all the best. We rock. You know, that's all. And thank God.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right, you can be seated. Thanks. Next, we would like to bring up Carl Scarborough, who's our director of. Do we have Carl Scarborough? Yes. Okay.
Good morning. At our,
Oh, good. I just wanted to this is, we're bringing this to you at a request of our chairman. He recently asked us to do some analysis related to bus stop or transit stop crashes and kind of some trends and do a little research, so.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we had Parsons Brinkerhoff, who has done our transit shelter safety studies. We asked them to go back and look at the crash datas, for not only for bus shelters, but for pedestrians and bicyclists and motorists, and come back and give you some information and some numbers on what the total roadway environment is. So if Sam So is here from Parsons Brinkerhoff, I'll let him go through his numbers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members. Pleasure to be here. I'm going to present to you kind of an update on the transit stop crash data. And where's the clicker? There we go. So initially we did this study. There was accidents going back in 2008. We conducted a study. The purpose of the study was to analyze, are there any trends, any things that RTC could be doing above and beyond? Are we compliant with the industry standards? And so we conducted that study in 2009 following an accident that took 4 lives along Spring Mountain Road. We updated the study again in 2013, and we're here to provide you with an update here for 2016. So what we've done is we've updated the data. We did not redo the report, so that the data is, as you can see before you, this data goes through September of last year. So within the accidents that have occurred since 2007 to September of last year, which is almost 9 years, there's approximately 20 transit shelter crashes per year. And we'll talk about that. So putting it into perspective, on average, it's roughly about 0.05% of all valley-wide traffic accidents. What that means is 1 in 2,000 accidents involve a transit shelter. However, with people waiting at the bus stops, they're not expecting motorists to be coming onto the sidewalks. So looking at the fatalities over that same nearly 9-year period, unfortunately the valley has suffered nearly 1,400 fatalities during that same period. When you look at the non-motorized fatalities, pedestrians, bicyclists, people waiting at the transit stop, that's almost 350 over the same period. Among those, 7 of those were actually people waiting at the bus stops. So again, that's too many. However, this is a systemic problem valley-wide. It's not unique to RTC. So really, the trends have not really increased relative to accident frequency, relative to the transit stops. However, again, when you have a vehicle versus a transit patron, there's really no protection for them. So unfortunately, we have had some injuries and fatalities.
Sam, if I could interrupt just for a moment, back to that last slide. So I understand the transit shelter, 7 fatalities.
Since 2007, correct, and that goes to September of 2015.
And then in the pedestrian, did you say those pedestrians could have been part of a shelter, or are they separate?
No, those were separate.
Separate? Okay.
And so those are a number of factors. Again, as we know, that's a big issue. Sometimes they're motorists, sometimes there are DUIs, sometimes we know that pedestrians sometimes cross unsafely, sometimes they're crossing at nighttime in clothing that is dark. So there's a number of contributing factors. So again, when you look at the number of motor-related accidents that caused fatalities, it's quite shocking. I think this slide shows 1,382, again, with a non-motorized involvement, vehicle versus pedestrian, bicycles, or transit patrons, it's nearly 350 during that same period. So each crash, as you're focusing now upon the transit shelters themselves, each one is unique. And when we've looked at the statistics, they're all over the valley. They're not concentrated on any particular corridor, but some of the common themes that we do find are they are shelters that are located on the sidewalks. They are also shelters that are right adjacent to 45-mile-an-hour posted speed limits. So those are 2 of the factors. So there isn't a single solution that would mitigate all of these issues. As I mentioned previously, a number of these accidents, fatalities, and injuries have been attributable to motorists that have been under the influence, unfortunately. Not all of them. So part of the safety study previously had made a recommendation, and RTC has implemented a number of those recommendations. And this would be actually a pretty good example of some of those recommendations. The AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials Roadside Safety Guide, recommends that their findings are that accidents next to roadways to fixed objects, 80% of those accidents are within a 4 foot of the back of curb. So the recommendation was to move the transit shelters at least 6 feet back. So this would be a good example of moving that shelter back, and RTC has had a program over the past several years to remedy, where available. And again, quite frankly, a number of these locations, there is limited right-of-way, there are private properties, so RTC is proactively working with property owners to see if they can provide this 6-foot cushion. So kind of the primary strategies, again, as I've described, is if you can provide, move the shelters back by 6 feet. If you can, again, for high volume shelters, do a bus turnout. We recognize that provides operational issues as well, but that would be another recommendation. And then, again, this is just a subset of the overall problem that we've had in the valley. So a perhaps a coordinated public service, much like what the flood control has done to keep people from driving through floodwaters. It may be just to enhance pedestrian safety, how motorists can be a little bit more aware, yield the right of way. So a public service campaign may be beneficial to this. Those are the primary strategies. Secondary strategies are things that require collaboration with the other entities. So RTC and many of the local entities have already engaged a Complete Streets program. And Complete Streets, just as a reminder for our audience, it's really looking at designs that take into account all modes of transportation, motorized, pedestrians, bicyclists, so that it is safe for all modes. And so you would be providing, in this case, examples where you would actually have a buffer between the general public and the bus lane. You would have wider sidewalks. You would have dedicated bus lanes. So that strategy is being implemented on a number of streets across the valley. Part of the Complete Streets also, sometimes it involves lowering the speed limits. A lot of the designs actually narrow the roadways, so narrow the lanes from 12-foot lanes to 10-foot lanes, and inherently that causes the motorists to slow down. So, and that's one of the contributing factors that are leading to these injuries and deaths. So those are kind of the strategies. It is, again, the transit shelter crashes are just a subset of the overall issue of vehicles versus non-motorized modes. I'd be willing, certainly entertain any questions you may have.
Comments or questions for Sam or Coral? Mayor Pro
Mr.
Tem?
Chairman, thank you. I wonder, now that we've received this report and it's given some recommendations, I wonder what the next steps should be, maybe as municipalities and the RTC, what we might do to evaluate our roadways and look at implementing more complete street strategies, but maybe there's things that we could do to study road diets or things like that to implement some of these to ensure the protection of folks at the bus stops.
Yeah, absolutely. We are working with the state and a number of agencies on corridor by corridor reviews. Most recently, we met with Aaron Breen from UNLV on Boulder Highway. From a pedestrian environment, Boulder Highway is a real problematic corridor. The state was there, the county was there, the city was there, RTC was there, and it was a lot of discussion about the whole corridor and how to improve it and how to make it safer. And I think those are the types of efforts that we love to be part of and will continue to be.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you. So let me follow up on that since it's in my district. And I wasn't able to be there, but the meeting went very, very well. And then we had a subsequent one, and I want to thank NDOT for participating. PD couldn't be there, but we talked afterwards. And I believe NDOT has identified 7 sections where pedestrian activated crossings are going to be needed. They're looking at both Danish as well as, now I'm going to forget, I was learning all these terminologies in that meeting, but Danish crossings and something else. And I think you were able to tag on to a project you have going to at least do the Sun Valley crossing, I think, currently, right across from the cannery, I think. That's a Mary Beth's, but I drove out there to double check it. I want to thank you for putting up 2 signs very quickly because we decided to kind of look at from, now I'm going to forget my notes, trop to something to notify them that we've lowered the speed limit along there. It's too wide. So I'd like to once again invite, I believe NDOT has embraced the complete streets concept on that corridor, which would be great because then we could actually narrow it currently. And then roundabouts came up, which we're fine with, and I think NDOT was interested in as well at that time, that it's really a perfect place because then if 5 years down the road the traffic starts to pick up, people need to understand, as long as you design your roundabouts correctly with your braking, your line of sight, they work very well, and they're on most highways in Europe, and so I think we can figure out how to drive around them. So there's some other factors that are coming in. We did check for you in the capacity for the lighting is in our roadway, so we don't need to have to work through a permit through NV Energy, which will take forever. So I just wanted to throw that out there because there's some of this that I would hope that we do, it's low-hanging fruit that we could do sooner. I just don't know what other projects, Rudy, you have out there that maybe we could piggyback some of that pedestrian piece, the advanced lighting for that section. I don't know that you necessarily need lights all the way down the median, but I think where the pedestrians are going was the conversation. So I just wanted to share that as well. But Aaron Breen was not at that meeting, but we had a really good one. So thank you. I should have invited you all to it. But
Thank you. Mayor Lee, and then Mayor Goodman.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Carl. So in North Las Vegas, we're pretty much on a pretty straight grid system. We don't have meandering roads and, kind of cool things like that. But I recognize, like, going down Cheyenne. Cheyenne has turned into a major arterial, especially with Apex and everything that's going to happen out there. My question is, does it ever get to a point, Tina, that we could put traffic count out there and say, if your street, Charles, Cheyenne, has 100,000 cars an hour going through it, we need to get a bus turnout on there. And we go to that business owner and say, you're going to put a bus turnout here. And I don't mind North Las Vegas being a pilot project for something like that. But, everything stops. Industry stops. Dangerous situations happen when buses stop on roads. I'd like to commit Jennifer Duty, our city public works director, to work with you guys, figure out what could we do in North Las Vegas now to start implementing those turnouts. I recognize turnouts are far better than 6 feet of concrete between that bus shelter and the street. So I think we want to go to work with this on these turnouts, and I recognize it costs money, and we'll have to figure that out. But as far as the economy goes, we're ready. So if you give me some kind of idea of what makes an arterial street, or what a traffic count has to be, we'll go down and talk to those business owners, and we'll start moving in that direction to make these safer streets also. So I just want to throw that out, that we'd like to do something with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love the opportunity to partner with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Goodman?
Yes, just one question. What does the data show that we have in Nevada on the turnouts? Have there been fatal accidents and cars going into the turnouts, or have they all been beyond that where there are no turnouts? Aside from a drunk driver and somebody just texting and everything, I realize that's been the biggest problem for these accidents. But specific to the data, have there been any of the fatalities and on these bus turnouts?
The data is fairly limited, but typically, Carl, you can probably speak to
Yeah,
this.
since we've been tracking it, we've not had any fatalities at a turnout. We've had some crashes at a bus shelter in a turnout, but no fatalities.
And was that caused, do you recall on that particular item, was it caused by somebody having a medical episode or a drug addict or doing texting? Was it something that
Yes.
they?
It was an inattentive driver. If I remember correctly, I think she dropped her cell phone and was reaching for it
Oh, I do
while making a
remember
left
that
turn.
one. Okay, and is that pretty typical where we are in this with other cities similar to ours in Orlando or somewhere?
We have surveyed the top 50 transit agencies in the country trying to see how they deal with this. And while it's an episodic incident in other communities, most of these agents, actually all of these agencies, they don't really track it. They don't track the crash data. It's not an overriding concern for them.
So from the research that we have conducted, it appears that this issue is somewhat isolated to Las Vegas. It may be because we have wide streets, and we have many of our principal arterials are 6 lanes, 45 mile an hour plus. During the off-peak period, we can move pretty freely, and some people abuse that speed limit. And you can find 6-lane arterials in other major urban areas, but generally the congestion level really precludes them from traveling at the excessive speeds that we see here in our valley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Sam. Carl, thank you.
Yeah, I have one more quick item. So obviously the recommendations out of the safety studies is that we move bus shelters back, and we wanted to take this opportunity to recognize some of our partners in the community who've given us easements so we can do this. And so to date, through 43 different partnerships, we've received 58 easements from property owners who voluntarily have given us those easements. We'd like to recognize Lori Nelson from Stations Casinos, Russ Maurer from the Roman Catholic Diocese of Las Vegas. So, and then Judy Perez from Seagull Suites. They've been tremendous partners, and we're very fortunate to have these folks and these organizations to work with. Thank you.
Thank you again, Cole. Before we move forward, this is another one that perhaps you talk internally.
Okay.
But with Erin Breen's efforts on pedestrian safety and maybe the Boulder Highway, coming into the budget cycle, let's take a look at a potential campaign. I know Metro does some things, different public agencies do some things as far as pedestrian safety, and but let's take a look if we as the RTC/MPO should at least evaluate a major campaign.
Or contributing to the existing campaigns to help them.
And I don't know
elevate
what
their
that
efforts.
existing
Sure.
campaign
I
is.
could,
know
I could
there's
speak to that
pieces
in
of it.
my director's report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Existing campaign for pedestrian safety and. we're
You'll
working-
address it as part of
yes.
your
Okay,
report?
great.
Yeah, they've got a very effective program going on. All right. Last on the general manager's report is I'd like to make all of you aware and everybody in the audience aware and anybody from the media, yes, you, Rick Villada, if you could help me out here, promoting our project prioritization survey. We launched this last month, and it's an interactive online survey where we're asking everybody and anybody in our community to contribute their thoughts. It's very easy, takes about 5 minutes, and again, it's just point and click, point and click. It is to, we want it, you know, there's no secret that our transportation needs far outweigh our resources, and so we are asking the community to really help us understand how we should be prioritizing our resources. Should we be, and what exactly are the transportation values here in Southern Nevada? Should we be focusing on safety? Is it congestion that's driving, that you feel our dollars need to be appropriated to? Is it maintenance or new roads? And we're taking these answers into consideration as we provide input to our Transportation Resource Advisory Committee, or our TRAC committee. And we also will be using this input, this feedback, to help us modify our regional transportation plan. So if we could ask, of course, all of our board members, those who are in the audience, and anybody who can help us convey this website and this message to forward it on, we will greatly appreciate it. Again, we have about 2,000 responses, but we'd really like to see a lot more than that.
Commissioner?
Can Angela get us that for our email newsletters
Sure.
that we do? Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we conclude our general manager's report. Next on your agenda is to receive a report from the Nevada Department of Transportation Director Rudy Melfabon.
Thank you, Tina. Wanted to cover a few updates from our visit back to Washington, D.C. recently. One of the things that we talked about was at Mayor Goodman's request. Well, just wanted to cover this. No, I just wanted to let you know that we did talk with Senator Reed about the I-15 issue and the concerns with movement of tourists along that lifeline, freight along that corridor. We talked with the Caltrans director, and we have some more follow-up to do on that issue. But unfortunately, Caltrans is in the midst of cutting about $750 million out of their work program because of the way they collect gas tax. They have to, their Board of Equalization has to adjust the revenue downward so that there's not more money collected than, it's a weird system in California, I'll just say that. So they're in a difficult spot, but we are going to continue the discussion about what to do on that.
Whatever we can do, I mean, I know we're supportive of it, and it's freight they're interested in.
Very good.
Thank you, thank you.
The other thing that was a recent development was there's 2 federal grants that were recently made available by the U.S. Department of Transportation. One is Tiger, and you're familiar with that. That was used for the Flamingo Bus Rapid Transit project. And those types of projects that have a transit element in them compete very well, and I'm sure that the RTC is going to develop an application for that. But there's $500 million available this federal fiscal year for the Tiger grant program, The applications are due April 29th. There's a 20% match requirement, but typically by using some of the leverage from state and local funds, applications typically are about the 50% range so that they're more competitive. The other recent grant program is related to freight, and they made up an acronym which I won't get into. I haven't memorized it yet, but it's called the Fast Lane Freight Grant Program. It's $800 million, so it's substantial, and those applications are due April 14th. There's a 40% match requirement and lots of other requirements in these grant programs, but I just wanted to mention those opportunities. NDOT for that Fast Lane grant program is looking at how we could access some of that grant money for US 95 in the Northwest and I-15 North. NDOT has the environmental approval all the way up to Apex Interchange where North Las Vegas Boulevard crosses under I-15. We'd like to address that gap between Apex Interchange and the US 93 interchange, also known as the Garnet Interchange. So we think it'd be an easy lift for us to do the environmental clearance on that, have wide right-of-way along the interstate. So pretty straightforward for the environmental clearance, and we'll be exploring submitting that as a grant application. The other thing that was recently in the news about earmarks, and earmarks were when over 10 years ago, Congress used to be able to have earmarks in the transportation bills or appropriations acts. Well, in the Appropriations Act that was passed in December of last year allowed for repurposing of older earmarks where maybe 10%, no more than 10% had been obligated. And obligated means it's booked in the federal financial system towards a project. So we looked at that, and I know that there were stories about millions of dollars available to Nevada. We looked at what's remaining balances of earmarks. There's about $27.4 million, but that money is still going to the original projects that it was earmarked to. There's about $18.6 million that Clark County is using for the Laughlin, the Colorado River Bridge in Laughlin. I know that they're proceeding with advancing that project to the next phase and then eventually contracting out the construction. The City of North Las Vegas, NDOT allowed City of North Las Vegas to use $5.3 million for the 215 and I-15 North interchange. That was an older earmark, and I talked with Jennifer, Public Works Director Jennifer Duty, and she's already got plans for the engineering phase of that. I think it's going to be on the City Council agenda shortly. So that's moving along. So that's a lion's share of the earmarks, and there's $3 million that NDOT has for the Star interchange, which is going forward on I-15. So all in all, there's only a small amount of money. I think there was one earmark that's actually could be captured under that program of new flexibility, and that was Lake Mead Parkway Phase 2. It was a very small earmark, $237,500. So not much available, but we will put that money to use, so not leave it to be swept up by some other action by the federal government. Wanted to talk about the pedestrian bridge project. Obviously, the arena is going to be opening up soon there on Tropicana by I-15. We want that opening to be successful, so MGM approached us to delay the start of the construction of the pedestrian bridge project there. We'll be briefing the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority about that because we think we have to accommodate that request just to have a successful opening of the arena. And since it's the bulk of that money is coming from the LVCVA, we want to brief their board as well. And I think the last thing to mention is the neon groundbreaking. I mentioned it before, but it's scheduled for April 7th, and it's going to be a wild affair. I know that we're looking forward to the kickoff of that project, and in typical Vegas fashion, we'll have quite an event. So we're looking forward to that on April 7th. That concludes. So regarding pedestrian safety, NDOT had worked with UNLV, Aaron Breen, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the other kind of stakeholders on pedestrian safety under the Zero Fatalities program. And we recently launched a campaign. It's a deliberate misspelling of the word epidemic. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police representative talked about the epidemic of pedestrian fatalities in the Las Vegas Valley. And Metro has been a great leader in bringing attention to this issue of highway traffic safety and specifically pedestrian safety as the leader of a local coalition in Southern Nevada dedicated to those efforts. I don't know if you can bring it up on the screen, but the website is EPED, so epidemic spelled with PED in the middle of it, epidemic.org, EPED. MIC.org. And if you go to that website, so it's educating drivers on how to watch out for pedestrians, the things that you have to consider as a driver, but also as a pedestrian. Because it's both groups have to be aware of each other and watch out for the safety element. For pedestrians, obviously they're more at risk. And Aaron Breen has been a great partner at the university in putting forth these types of campaigns, working with NDOT, Metro, the Office of Traffic Safety. The program also gives some really touching and emotional bios about some of the victims of pedestrian fatalities. It's very emotional to just click on the photograph of a person and see what happened. Impaired drivers, speeding drivers, people that are just not paying attention can be the cause, but it's also cases where we can build infrastructure. We know that we're doing some things on Boulder Highway, on Charleston, on Blue Diamond Road to have the infrastructure, but that's only part of the challenge. The other part is affecting people's behavior, drivers and pedestrians. So would like to put that plug in for that epidemic.org website. And it gives a lot of information and lists all the partners associated with that program. And definitely RTC has a link on we have the link to the RTC's website too, along with other partners in the valley. So that concludes the director's report. I'm willing to respond to any questions.
Commissioner.
Thank you. I also noticed that the governor did a plug-in, electric car plug-in in Beatty. Is that what I heard about?
Yes, so the US 95 between Las Vegas and Reno has been designated the electric highway. We're working with NV Energy and the Office of Energy is the lead agency with that electric highway project. They worked with NV Energy to have private owners of businesses sign an agreement, they put in the infrastructure is placed on that site. So they try to get it in town so that people have things to go see, museums, kind of the local businesses and visiting, getting the historic flair for that area while their vehicle is charging. NDOT has a couple of electric vehicles. We use one for that media event. But the idea is to have spaced about every 75 miles have an electric vehicle charging station at a local business. NDOT is helping out in Hawthorne and in Tonopah for some sites because they're unable to get a local business to. They're still working on Tonopah, but they weren't unable to get one in Hawthorne to sign the agreement with NV Energy. In the other parts of the state, we're looking at the cooperative groups of rural power companies to do the same type of program, and the Office of Energy is leading that effort. So more to come on the rest of the state, but we're really concentrated on those two locations in Tonopah and Hawthorne and they've already got a business partner in Fallon. So it's going to be electrifying or having the electric vehicle charging stations available all the way from Vegas to Reno without having that anxiety. If you own an electric vehicle, you wouldn't normally have that type of range.
Good news. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rudy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, your next agenda item is to conduct your first citizens participation period.
This is the first time set aside for those wishing to speak to the board on a posted agenda item. I have no cards. Seeing and hearing no one, will close this portion of public comment.
Your next items constitute your consent agenda. They are items 5 through 33 and may be taken in one motion.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next on your agenda is item number 34, which will be handled by Deputy General Manager MJ Maynard.
Thanks, Tina. Members of the board, item 34 is to evaluate the performance of the general manager for the period of January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015, and to formulate recommendations on management goals and objectives. On November 12, 2015, the RTC Board of Commissioners appointed Chairman Larry Brown, Vice Chair Deborah March, and Commissioner Chris Giunciliani to serve on the Evaluation Committee to review the performance of the General Manager. On January 27, 2016, the committee met to evaluate the General Manager's performance. At this point, I will turn this item over to General Manager Tina Quigley to give a brief presentation and then to the board for recommendations.
So what I'll do is briefly review some of the major endeavors we took on in 2015 and some of our accomplishments. When we started 2015, we started it with the theme that this was going to be the year that we'd be breaking down barriers. This was going to be the year that we were going to start to push some conversations and push ourselves out of our comfort zones. The RTC has always taken on a regional perspective, traditionally, but this was a year where we were definitely recognizing we were going to have to do more at outreach, more at coordination, more at communicating and sharing and having more participation with both private sector and convening those conversations. 2015 was a big year, and I don't want to undervalue it at all. In fact, what I want to do is really say a very big thank you to the RTC team that I work with. I know that this was the year that we pushed out of our comfort zones. This was the year that you guys worked really long hours. You worked Fridays even when you're not supposed to be working Fridays. You worked weekends. And you always made me look good, and I love it. I love it. When you have a team where you can fall down and the whole team kind of visually blocks and goes, nothing to look at here, nothing to look at here, keep on walking. So I just want to say a very big thank you to my team because it was a big year, and hopefully next year will be a little bit lower, but I appreciate all that we did. It was definitely a year of breaking down barriers. The things that we did, in summary, we took on the role of core administrator of Southern Nevada Strong. We completed the Transportation Investment Business Plan. That was a huge Herculean undertaking. We continued to educate and push through the projects related to fuel revenue indexing and continue to communicate with private sector and property owners on its importance. As fallout related to that, we recognized the need to create the Regional Project Coordination Committee, and we'll report a little bit on that. And then also we continued to grow and expand our transit services. So Southern Nevada Strong, in summary, with your direction and leadership, the RTC became the core administrator. As you know, it was the very first federally recognized plan. It created opportunities for local governments and our community to develop a foundation. We're collectively building complete communities. Over the next year, we'll be continuing to work with our 13 partners. But in summary, what we did related to Southern Nevada Strong is we did meet with the original 13 regional partners and key stakeholders to get their input and recommendations as we become the core administrators and we execute and implement. We developed the implementation framework and strategy, and what that basically consists of is to establish ourselves as a collaborative, efficient, and effective leader, to engage, educate, and move Southern Nevadans into action, to provide practical tools, trainings, and technical expertise, and to increase alignment and availability of resources. That's one of the things, having that survey that we've got out there is one of the things moving towards those goals. We hosted 2 lunch and learn sessions, both of which were very highly attended and received a lot of great feedback and enthusiasm for them. We had Salt Lake and Phoenix come in and talk to us about how they became what they are in terms of their economic development, how they got support for their investments in transit and transportation. We also had Robert Grove from Envision Utah come and provide us insight as to how he convened business and aligned the business community and its community leaders with public entities in order to come up with a vision, a blueprint for Utah. And again, it's not a short-term plan, it's a 50 to 100-year plan. We reconvened the Southern Nevada Strong Steering Committee, on which Councilwoman, or Vice Chair Deborah March is the chair, and Commissioner June Kiliani is the vice chair of. This steering committee is composed of the 13 executives from our 13 regional partners who originally helped develop the plan, and they will continue to help advise us on our core administrator duties and ensure that we're meeting the needs of our partners in our community. The TIBP we undertook, which was an extremely exhausting and rewarding exercise. We have received all kinds of accolades, and we have also received some very substantive criticisms and suggestions moving forward as well. What was most important about this is it was the first time that we sat down with a lot of the resort leaders, a lot of the leaders in the community, the LVCBA, the airport, to talk about how are we going to connect, how are we going to continue to move our visitors within our resort corridor. Accomplishments, we did release the draft TIBP plan, and David Swallow will be presenting to you the final. We had more than 65 recommendations that we broke into 5 different categories. Each recommendation included estimated cost and potential funding sources. And again, I want to talk about these are estimated costs and potential funding sources. We're very careful not to make any specific recommendations at this point. Specific recommendations are going to require a lot more conversation with the community and those stakeholders. And of course, we had extensive outreach to our community and business leaders. Fuel revenue indexing, we've spent almost 2 years now working on this. The last 12 months, we continued to award contracts and educate the community on its benefits and what we were doing with this money. We awarded 138 contracts totaling $328 million, and by our economists' formulas, creating 4,200 jobs. We did save, so far we've saved $46.4 million during procurement because bids are coming in lower than engineers' estimates, which is refreshing, and thus we were able to create an additional 21 FRI projects. Our credit rating increased from A+ to AA-, giving us an interest rate savings of $3.1 million. And we broke ground on some very key projects, including I-11, the Flamingo Corridor. We've got the Maryland Parkway, NEPA, the environmental process, underway, and also we completed the TIBP. With so much work going on in Southern Nevada, we realized that we needed to start having an outreach and a stronger understanding about orange cones and lane closures and impacts to drivers. We created the Seeing Orange campaign, which we originally thought was going to be a hotline, just a hotline for people to call in and let us know which FRI projects were, or just plain roadway projects were annoying or they wanted to learn more about. We created the SeeingOrangeNevada.com website and the Orange Cone hotline. What we learned is that a lot of the projects that were out there and that the public was upset about were not RTC projects. Utilities have got a lot of work out there. The Water Reclamation Department has got a lot of work out there. Water Authority, Water District's got work out there. Home builders are busy again and have got work out there. So we realized that we really needed to have a more coordinated conversation with all these different public works agencies, all these agencies that have a reason or a need to be closing lanes, and start coordinating those lane closures more appropriately, and also start coordinating our messages out to the public as efficiently as possible. So we took an old committee that was called the Utility Coordination Committee, which for the most part had a lot of these members on it anyways, but had kind of become a committee that wasn't doing that much. We re-energized it, re-missioned it, refocused it, and we now call it the Regional Project Coordination Committee, wherein we are talking about who's got what projects coming up, and how can we work together to make sure those lane closures are closures for the most efficient, operated most efficiently as possible. What can we be doing? Can we do gas and electric and water at the same time? Can we only take the lane once as opposed to taking the lane, opening again, taking the lane? As a subcommittee to that group, we formed so that was kind of the Regional Planning Project Coordination Committee is a longer term committee, but we knew we had a crisis right now. So under Mike Hand's direction and JP Penuelas, we created the Cone Management Working Group, which is a group of people who are in the field right now, understanding, barricade people, contractors, field inspectors, knowing what's going on right now and reporting on a bi-weekly basis together to talk about who's doing what and why and how we can get those cones off faster, or work together. So it's been very effective. We've only had a few meetings so far. We're about 3 months into it. Yeah. But a lot of great recommendations. What's really neat is this group knows where our problems are, and they know where we have the opportunity to be more efficient, and they're making those suggestions, and we'll take it to our public works directors and our entities, the county and the city, probably to ask for some changes and to become more efficient at our own jurisdictional processes. All right, I'm wrapping up. Transit services, we enhanced our bus shelter and safety program. In fact, we believe we had another 150 shelters that we had installing 150 new transit shelters. We moved them back 5 feet away from the curb, and we've got more than 50% of our stops at this point at least 5 feet away from the curb. We increased our transit services and hours of frequency. We added 60,000 additional service hours over 2015, and we introduced Route 121, and we also extended Route 212, which was Sunset, westward, creating the first east-west transit connection between Henderson and the Southwest Beltway. Moving on. We also spent 2015 constructing the Mobility Training Center, and we had our grand opening in, I think it was November. When did we have our grand opening? January this year. The Mobility Training Center is a great asset to Southern Nevada in that it is the location where people who ride paratransit but would like to learn how to use fixed route can come and learn. We've partnered with Angela's House, which is a foundation focused on training people who are visually impaired how to live independently. And it is also the location where now when you need to be certified for paratransit, you go. We have everything kind of centrally located in this very beautiful new facility. So last year was about breaking barriers, we called it, really trying to push ourselves into conversations, really trying to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. This year, 2016, I think the theme of the RTC is going to be the RTC convenes. Our role in the community at this point, now that we've started generating some conversations, is to convene these conversations, to listen to our business leaders, our elected leaders, our community leaders, our stakeholders, the general public, and our local governments, listen to them, take direction from them, and then likewise bring those recommendations to you for action. And that was 2015 and what we'll be moving in 2016.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Mayor Pro
Chairman
Tem?
Hunt, thank you. Clearly, Ms. Quigley has really upped the game of the RTC over the last year, and we've seen additional responsibilities like really growing the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the TIBP work, the track work, and Southern Nevada Strong, taking all these things on and executing them well. And so when we went through the process of evaluating Tina for her work and making decisions about compensating her fairly, the scope and the magnitude of the things that she's taken on certainly warranted a significant increase in her salary. So.
Other comments or questions?
Thank
Mayor
you.
Lee?
I appreciate so much your leadership. I thought after Jacob left, I didn't know you were so prepared, but there's been just a seamless. I've enjoyed you. I hope you're satisfied with the evaluation because I'm ecstatic. So I appreciate you and don't want to lose you, okay? Thank you very much.
The Mayor, I'm sorry?
Oh, excuse me. Likewise, I've seen this organization just flourish in the past year that I've been on this committee. Thank you.
The committee, the same committee from Regional Flood, is bringing to the board a recommendation for a 6% salary increase to the general manager's base salary, and that is the recommendation.
I would also point out that only gets her to the middle of the pack as far as salary compensation, but you have one of the largest areas. It's kind of what we do in government. Sometimes we don't pay managers as well as we should. So that bump is not to be interpreted by employees or anybody else, but we did a study, basically a wage study in comparison. And I personally like to break the glass ceiling as a woman, so I have no problems with supporting that part of it. Thank you.
That would be in the form of a motion. 6%. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Your next agenda item is item number 35, which is to receive and adopt the final transportation investment business study plan, or business plan, not study, it's a plan, and direct staff accordingly. And, yep, Senior Director David Swallow will present to you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. In December of 2015, we brought to you the draft Transportation Investment Business Plan. As you recall, this was a pretty collaborative effort that involved a number of members of public and private sector, really focusing in on the key economic engine of our valley as far as geographically where it's located, and in particular the industry in which it's based, which is tourism and our visitorship, and what that experience is that we're leaving with our visitors. And so the Transportation Investment Business Plan, looked at a myriad of transportation choices and options to improve mobility to and from Las Vegas, as well as once here within the resort corridor from what we call the core area in downtown going south to McCarran Airport, just west of I-15 over to Valley View, and then east over to Maryland Parkway. Really drilling down on that particular area and then looking at how that connects to the larger part of the valley, because workforce mobility is also a key consideration in any recommendations that we had. Those recommendations in the end included 5 different categories, including high capacity transit, pedestrian improvements, surface streets and freeway improvements, as well as policies and programs that were meant to turbocharge the recommendations to not just make a capital investment, but from a policy perspective, what else could we be doing to help enhance mobility. Since presenting it to you in December, we've done some outreach to the governing bodies to give presentations, including our own Executive Advisory Committee, the Las Vegas City Council, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the Board of County Commissioners, as well as the Transportation Access Advisory Committee and the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Committee. We originally envisioned having the document available for public review for 60 days when we released it in December, but we thought we'd extend it another 30 days just to make sure everybody had a chance to take a look at it and give us their feedback. So we extended that to a 90-day public comment period, which ended earlier this week. I'm pleased to report that we did get some good positive feedback from citizens as well as from member entities who participated in the process. And what we would like to do is to take that feedback and incorporate it into the draft plan and finalize it before adopting it. This really is, it was great to get that level of participation throughout the process, but also to get the feedback in the end. We heard, a number of comments that range from technology opportunities to help drivers, detect fatigue and to alert drivers, to, some folks were really advocating for more consideration of streetcar throughout the valley, to, not just prioritizing roadway or freeway improvements, but really looking at any type of mobility solution, whether it's pedestrian, whether you're riding your bike, taking transit. All of those should be considered and given equal priority, not just focusing so much on roadway or freeway. In addition to that, as Tina alluded to earlier, we heard some comments with regard to funding, and by no means is the Transportation Investment Business Plan meant to dictate how funds should be spent. In fact, it's really up to the local jurisdictions to consider the recommendations that are in the plan and incorporate them within their respective plans as they see fit. So moving forward, what we would like to do, as I mentioned, is incorporate the comments that we received into the plan and bring back a final plan for you to adopt. In addition to that, we're looking at further developing what would be the recommendations under the RTC's purview, those specifically related to high-capacity transit. Not only for, say, projects like light rail or some other technology on the Strip or Maryland Parkway, but really looking at how we connect the whole valley together with a robust transit network that not only includes a regular fixed route but high-capacity corridors. We've done this in the past with our transit system development plans. We've taken the recommendations from those plans and have since developed them. As examples, we've done Sahara Avenue, Flamingo Road. We've implemented freeway-based express routes. We did the Boulder Highway BRT, and we're now doing the environmental on Maryland Parkway. All of those came out of previous efforts. What we need to do is now look going forward, how did those investments fit into a larger comprehensive network of high-capacity transit corridors? Where should those corridors be? Where should they touch? Particularly given the connections to residential centers as well as employment centers. Another recommendation that the RTC should consider or is considering assisting with is the development of a resort corridor mobility association. This was a program that was recommended in the TIBP, and it was meant to kind of build upon what we heard, as far as the orange cones and stuff, and really from the event organizers, people that are organizing conventions, concerts, and other events here in Las Vegas, and the demands on our infrastructure, particularly in the resort corridor in this case, but also throughout the valley. And so RTC is considering partnering with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority as well as the Nevada Resort Association to look at how could we develop this resort corridor mobility association, how should it be structured, what geographic boundaries would it have, who should be involved, and then to let it go forward from there. Finally, as I mentioned, the lead entities are encouraged to consider the recommendations of the TIBP and informing them and developing their own capital improvement programs and to incorporate those as they see fit. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, David. I just have some comments. Well, as Vice Chair of the RTC and Chair of the Southern Nevada Strong Consortium Committee and Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Henderson, I've been a passionate supporter and champion of regional planning efforts and strategic transit investment across the valley. And that said, I'd like to applaud the RTC for its efforts in drafting the Transportation Improvement Business Plan, or the TIBP, to create a sophisticated metropolitan transit system beginning with the resort corridor and branching out for future connections throughout the region. Through the Southern Nevada Strong process, we did extensive research, analysis, federal technical assistance was called on, and an unrivaled community input process reaching more than 70,000 residents in the community and all involving 13 partner agencies. We learned and solidified that making the right transportation investments in our community can not only strengthen our existing economic activity, but diversify our target sectors and better serve the needs of both the tourists and the residents alike. We also learned that Southern Nevadans, including Henderson residents, lead regional lives, working on the Strip, studying at Touro University in Henderson, seeking medical care throughout the valley, and accessing world-class entertainment venues. More than 87,000 Henderson residents travel outside our city for work, and more than 45,000 people who are employed within the city of Henderson live outside our boundaries. So there's a lot of traffic that occurs between our city and the rest of the valley. It's apparent on all fronts that planning solely within our municipalities or corridors simply won't suffice. The importance of collaboration, big picture thinking, and I think Tina talked about how important collaboration was. Big picture thinking and regional planning was echoed and re-echoed on our recent trip to Denver and in hearing about their successes. They spoke of the need to think regionally and to plan for our future, and of the economic benefit that investment in mass transit options like light rail can have on the surrounding areas and the region as a whole. It goes without saying that the resort corridor is a crucial starting point for any transportation initiative in the region. However, the City of Henderson has significant concerns about the need for more long-term transportation planning and regional connectivity to be included in the TIBP framework and future master plan studies. Incorporating transit opportunities into Henderson is critically important for any comprehensive transportation plan. And based on these findings, I'd like to direct staff to update the TIBP to reflect the comments that were made by the City of Henderson staff in a March 7th memo. I'd like to again compliment you and your staff for the good work that you did in putting this together, the extensive outreach, the collaboration, the cooperation. This is huge, and I think that perhaps we could identify a time for you to come out and present to the Henderson City Council on the activities of the TIBP and incorporate the discussions and conversations that we've had. And I commend you and look forward to growing this plan and to implementing it community-wide. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor.
Yeah, I'd like to just follow up on some of those comments, and I kind of hinted at this the last time you gave the presentation. I'd like to make it a little more explicit this time. You know, echoing what we talked about at the start of the meeting about collaboration and what we learned from the city of Denver and planning, not just 5-10 years out or, you know, right in front of our nose, but looking out decades. It's important, I think, that we do that here. And you know, I believe last time you commented that, you know, the TIBP was projected to create, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000+ jobs, and certainly the economic growth that's going to result from this in the core area, in the resort corridor in McCarran and in those areas is, you know, in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And but when you have that many new people coming to town to fill these jobs, you know, and their families, that can be 500,000 or more people. And they don't just live in the core area. They live in Henderson. They live in the outlying areas of the county. They live in Boulder City and even Mesquite. And so I think it would be irresponsible government, you know, akin to political malpractice, to not think about how we address those impacts, because those people live in those areas. They travel around the whole valley, not just in the core area. They go to schools, they go shopping, and that's going to tax our roadways everywhere else. And so we do have a built-in funding source here. We've got this economic growth that's going to come from this. And we need to look now at how we tap into that to create a perpetual funding source for other transportation projects in the future. Some of that money, not all of it, obviously we wouldn't do it if it wasn't going to create economic growth for the corridor, but some of that money needs to come back, and we need to tap into it now so that we don't wake up 15 years and say into the future and say, whoa, what happened? We've got all these problems around us, this extra traffic, these new people, and we haven't planned for it. We can use that funding that's there, that economic growth, to perpetually fund programs like this. And so we need to ask those questions now. We have to have that dialogue now. We need to make sure that the resort corridor understands that now, that they're going to have to participate in giving back to our communities. And so I realize this is early in the process, and don't want to belabor the subject, but I do want to make it front and center because I think it's critical that we address it now.
Thank you. David, so I was a little confused on the first bullet point. The recommendation is to adopt the TIBP. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Do we have official responses from all the member agencies on the draft plan?
We have a number of the member agencies that we worked with throughout the process. We did get some additional comments before the deadline that we had this week, and so we wanted to consider those. We hadn't received them before that time, so we wanted to take some time to incorporate those in. Otherwise, we had reached out to all the member organizations to get their feedback.
So do we need to hold this for a month, or are we ready to move forward?
I'd recommend that we hold it for a month,
okay,
to be able to incorporate the comments that we received.
That's what I thought I heard you say earlier. So I would ask this, that understanding all the member agencies have worked closely during this process, I would like to make sure that they all have the opportunity to comment or choose not to comment on this final draft plan.
Okay.
So the final TIBP that we will have in front of us is the RTC next month for adoption. Don't want anybody trying to send comments in on the Wednesday night before. Give them the opportunity, do some personal outreach, take them out for a cup of coffee, make them pay for it. But I would like to make sure all the member agencies are officially on record, either choosing not to participate on the final adoption or making final comments.
Okay. We'll do that. And if necessary, we'll hold it another month if we need a little bit more time for that outreach.
Don't give them too much hold, because rumor has it that there's some that may just want to stall and slow and delay. We don't have time. A recession is a terrible thing to waste.
Amen.
Remember that. So I guess the recommendation then would be to hold this for a month? Council, is that? Okay. That would be my motion. On the floor, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your last item of the day is your final citizens' participation.
This is the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board filled out a card, or you're welcome to come down without a card. Just state your name for the record. Latasha Sherman. Good morning.
Morning. I'm coming here to speak about child care expenses.
Would you just state your name for the record?
Oh, you said it, Latasha Sherman.
I said it, but you have
Oh,
to
okay.
also.
Larry, all you guys, I would like for y'all to write this down. Child care is high. I've been working for RTC, well, Keolia's, Veolia, for 9 years. I had some extra children, too. And I didn't realize child care was expensive. So I would like for you guys to try to think about like a rebate program or help us on these child care costs. For 2 children I have to pay $1,700 a month for child care, and we don't get paid that much. So, I would love for you guys to consider, like you said, you're a woman, I'm a woman. I went to welfare. Welfare said I made $1 more, so they're not even helping me. So therefore, I would like for you guys to consider like a rebate program for people. I'm a single parent. For single parents to help us on these child care expenses. I would really appreciate that y'all would think about that. And or can I have half of her 6%? And then maybe I can afford that. But child care is very expensive for us drivers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Barnes. Dorothy, yep, here she is. On deck, Mr. Dennis Hennessy.
Good morning, Dorothy Barnes. I would just like to address, I'm always inviting people to give me signatures on a promissory note. I live in Henderson now. It takes me an hour to get down to Las Vegas, and I got up running late, and one of the drivers saw me. But what I want to talk about, summer's approaching. Last year, I don't know, we had buses breaking down, and now it's just spring, and buses are starting to break down. I remember the old mechanic Bill at the old downtown bus station. And we always talked, and I joked about it when he came over to the news station. I don't know where he's working, if he's retired. But I said, Bill, I know you got a heavy responsibility repairing these buses. And I know in the summer months, the heat index gets high here, and buses break down. And I know last year, I think it was, they were giving people bottles of water and day passes for waiting so long for another bus to come to replace the bus that was out of service because of the heat. Sometimes the bus have to sit and wait to cool off before they can continue. I was on the Flamingo bus, and I remember the driver said, we're going to sit here a few minutes so the bus can cool down. And the air conditioning, the double stack buses, it's really hot upstairs when the air conditioner goes out. So I don't know if Bill's got some help, if you've hired more mechanics to help him, because he seemed to have an overload at the old bus station. So I don't know what's going on with the mechanical repairing thing these days. But I'm still encouraging everybody to give me a signature on a promissory note. I can't discuss a lot of things here in the public, but I'm really in stress up here in Henderson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Brown, members of the commission, and the RTC staff. The reason I want to come forward today, not just because the buses are dirty, that situation seems to be getting a little bit better, so just want to update you.
Could you repeat that?
Reason I'm here today is it involves safety. It involves driver safety, and I spoke with with Mayor Goodman after she left. She came onto the board very passionate about driver safety. The RTC staff, Tina and her staff, MJ in particular, over the last 3 years, we've seen some tremendous improvements. It went from just a focus group to more Allied Barton participation out in the whole city, not just on the Strip, but it really improved on the Strip. Not just talking about safety doors, we have safety doors almost on every deuce on the Strip, and they're starting to put them in the next wave coming through. So the staff has really reacted to it. What I'm here today about is we're getting tired of being assaulted, and we're getting tired of nothing being done to these people that assault us. I don't know if you guys know or not, and one of the gentlemen in the RTC staff came up and showed me the Nevada revised statute. Unfortunately, I've been through this too many times in the court process. It is a gross misdemeanor according to our DA and everybody else. That involves if a policeman's hit, if a postal worker's hit, if a bus driver spit on or hit, all of us in the same boat. Gross misdemeanors aren't going to cut it, because when it gets to court, the judge, it gets knocked down. These people need to pay for what they're doing. And if the potential is 2 years in jail, I'm getting tired of getting hit. I'm getting tired of getting spit on. I challenge both the companies, MV and Keolia's, to do everything in your power to make it easier for us as drivers to identify potential assailants, because we have video of them hitting a driver, not getting caught, and then continuing to ride our system, putting other drivers at risk. We need your help. Please, get to the legislator, change the statute from a gross misdemeanor to a felony, and if it's already a felony, can we please educate our county attorney and the police officers that this is a felony and not a gross misdemeanor? I'm getting tired of getting punched. So your help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Des. Let's take a look at that. I mean, that's not just with the bus drivers, but that's certainly becoming prevalent. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Alita Dupree here for the record. Again, thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak with you all again. Part of me putting all my supplies out here in case I need them. And today, I'm mostly going to talk about what is central to what we do here, at least in my opinion, is buses. Hence, I have my fare here. As you know, I'm paying directly for what you're doing. So I like these new changes. I did get to ride the new buses, the long buses on the 206 route, which is making things easier for me. The crowding is not so severe. I did notice on the 206 today that there were two buses going in either direction that had not in service signs. They still picked me up and gave me the great service that I've always come to expect on line 206, but to see a not of service sign is not an accurate reflection of the status and character of service of that bus. I know where we're going, but what about people who've never been here before? And certainly it could be an issue at the Bonneville Transit Station. I don't think it's a driver issue, so we should ensure that all of our signs are accurate. I don't think we should have to go back to the roll-up signs of New York City back in the 60s and 70s, back in my day. I am enjoying the 113. It's consistent. Now it's every 15 minutes, helping me to get between here and Nellis Air Force Base in the Northeast Kingdom. I hope we will get some more of the new buses. That North Corridor has a lot of history to it. We had a good run with the MAX. Hopefully we can use it as a test bed for newer equipment, perhaps electric buses and buses with automated guidance, along with the consistent 15-minute service that we find now on the 113. No more people getting on the wrong bus and saying, well, why are you passing my stop? This will make it easy for me to get to Cashman Center next week with 15 minutes over to that Washington corner, the library, and the State Building instead of every 30. The crowds are not as severe as they used to be when I would get stuck on the 113 and head through the Owens, Washington, Bonanza area. So I'm liking these new things I'm seeing. I did get the chance to show my mother mobile ticketing for New Jersey Transit and help her set it up. Felt good for me to help her do it. I have an account with them. I am looking forward to seeing that coming here. My time is up, and thank you once again.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Morning, RTC staff. My name is Manny Verma, and I'm a mechanic with Keolis till last month. We parted company, but that's okay. Since I was the last one of the A mechanics that was let go by Keolis, we now have 3 open slots, A slots. And our CBA says that these slots needs to be filled. If you don't find anyone, you promote people from within. And if they don't have the qualification, you train them. That's what the CBA says. Our CBA is 62 pages long. The mechanics portion is only 5 pages, 4 to 5 pages. And the maintenance management has found a way to circumnavigate this CBA. It's only 4 pages. We don't ask for more. We don't need nothing. That's why it's only 4 pages. And before I came up here, I was told, make sure you have facts and documentation right there. They're right there behind me. So we figured this out because it was happening to the drivers, but we didn't believe it. Keolis is terminating people from the top and hiring from the bottom. Instead of filling those 3 A positions at the top, they hired 3 C mechanics, which is cheaper. But nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. But that's okay. Last year, we pulled our money together, 47 mechanics, and we hired a law firm. We hired ourselves an attorney to look into the shenanigan that's been going on in the maintenance department. And we got charges filed. And the bad thing about this is that you're our joint employer. And you are responsible for our well-being. The NLRB, August 27, 2015, they have revised this. You know, they determine a joint employee status. That means if you need a copy of this, our union secretary is back there. She can print you one, or she can email you one. And before I sit, I'd like to thank RTC staff, some people from RTC, especially the, it sucks to get old, I forget names. Wow, could you give me a couple of minutes?
Not a couple minutes,
A couple more seconds. The head of Human Resources, RTC, who's I believe is also in charge of safety and security, and their team for coming down to the facility and taking care of all our needs, safety and security. That's what Keolis is supposed to be taking care of. And I'd like to especially thank Judy Lopez for her hard work, persistence. This lady should get a medal, as far as I'm concerned. And I'd like to thank Warren Rich, the facility director, for replacing our old equipment and taking care of all the design flaw that came with the building, and especially the heating and the AC system. I thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close the public comment. This meeting is adjourned.